When I first bought that land out in Northern California, all I wanted was peace. Just quiet mornings with Miss rolling off a small lake at the edge of my property, coffee in hand, and the sound of ducks gliding across the still water. My wife, Clara, used to say that the place looked like a postcard, the kind people framed to remind themselves that heaven might not be so far away after all. We bought the land 40 years ago, long before the gated community came in. Back then, there wasn't a single stucco house in sight, just rolling hills, a few old oak trees, and a stream that wound lazily through the valley before pooling into a natural basin. I built a small dam at the edge to slow the flow, more for beauty than function. Over time, the lake became home to fish, birds, and an occasional deer that came down for a drink at dusk. But time has a way of changing everything, especially when people start showing up with money and rules. The Homeowners Association didn't exist when we moved in. It came later, when developers bought up the surrounding land and built fancy houses on what used to be cow pasture. They paved the gravel road I used to drive down with my old Ford and installed a shiny metal gate with keypads and cameras. Then one day, I received a letter inviting me, demanding me, to join the HOA since my property shared access through their new community road. I laughed when I read it. They can't be serious, I told Clara. They're asking us to pay them for the privilege of driving on our own land. She smiled the way she always did when she knew I was about to dig my heels in. Just don't let it get under your skin, Jack, she said softly. You fought enough battles in your life. She was right. I'd done my share of fighting, served in Vietnam, came home, started over, built this place from nothing. I'd thought the war was behind me. Turns out, sometimes the real battles come wearing polos and clipboards. At first, the HOA just sent letters about community standards and aesthetic harmony. Then came complaints about the unauthorized structure that was, according to them, altering the natural water flow. They were talking about my dam, the same one that had been there since before any of them even moved in. One afternoon, I found a notice tacked to my gate. Fine. $50,000 for illegal water hoarding. Water hoarding. That phrase almost made me laugh. California had been through droughts before. I'd seen the rivers dry up and the reservoirs shrink to puddles. But I'd never once stopped anyone from accessing water. In fact, the runoff from my dam fed the community's little man-made pond they loved to brag about in their brochures. The same pond they stocked with koi and decorated with solar lights. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I called the HOA office, a young man answered, his voice clipped and officious. Mr. Crawford, he said, we've received several reports from homeowners expressing concern that your dam is restricting natural water flow. According to our environmental compliance policy, you're in violation. Violation? I said, gripping the phone tighter. Son, that dam's been there since 1985. I built it with my own two hands. Be that as it may, sir, it's disrupting the water access to community property. I could almost hear him adjusting his tie. If you fail to pay the fine within 30 days, we'll pursue legal action. I hung up before he finished his sentence. Clara was standing in the doorway. She'd heard it all. Let them try, she said, eyes sharp. They have no idea who they're dealing with. We fought the fine, of course. I sent pictures, documents, even an old county permit from decades ago, proving the dam's existence. But bureaucracy doesn't bend to logic. A month later, they sent a certified letter. Failure to comply will result in lien proceedings. That was the moment something in me snapped. See, when a man spends his life working the land, building it, nurturing it, protecting it, there's a certain line you don't cross. And that HOA had just stomped right across it with muddy boots. So I decided if they wanted to talk about natural water flow, I'd give them exactly that. It took me a week to prepare. I waited until after the first big rain of the season. The dam was full, the lake shimmering and heavy. I checked the old release gate, the one I hadn't opened in years. Rusted, but still functional. That night, the sky cracked open with thunder, the kind that makes your chest vibrate. Clara stood by my side, her hand on my arm, as I turned the crank and heard the slow groan of metal giving way. The sound of rushing water filled the air, deep, powerful, unstoppable. The lake began to drain, feeding into the stream that wound straight down toward the community pond. Within hours, nature took over. By morning, their manicured lawns were soaked. Their precious koi pond overflowed into driveways. The decorative mulch floated like confetti. The same board members who'd find me were out in raincoats with buckets, trying to stop the flood that nature herself had unleashed. Of course, they called the county, claimed I'd sabotaged community property, but the inspection proved otherwise. The dam wasn't destroyed. I'd simply released natural water. I hadn't broken any law. I'd just let gravity do what it's always done. The county officer, an old fellow named Ray, came by that afternoon. He took one look at the empty lake and nodded. "She's free-flowing again," he said. "Nothing illegal about it." "Guess Mother Nature doesn't follow HOA rules," I said with a grin. He laughed. "No, she doesn't, but she sure knows how to settle a score." Word spread quickly. The HOA held emergency.